Okay, now we're back, and now we're looking at Nigeria goes cashless across the nation. A number of Nigerians were very delighted when they were told by the former governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, who's now the Emir of Kano, that we're going to have to test run cashless services in Lagos. Some people were unhappy because they'd rather carry their naira in their bag. They feel safer feeling the cash in their pocket, not some card that they might be worried might not work. Even when it works, they're still worried that they might not be able to get enough money as and when they need it.
They collect money from the ATM and they count it.
They count it. They have to be sure that
ATM may have given them the wrong amount.
But we still have some issues because just last week on my way back from a trip outside Lagos, I got to the ATM to collect some cash and I got the first bit of money, and then I tried to take the same amount, and trying it didn't come out with anything, but I was still debited. I've had to, I thought it would revert itself, but it didn't happen. And it's taking over a week, and it's still going to take possibly a week having filled the form to get the money back. So there's still issues with it.
Indeed.
But the bottom line in all of this is that Nigeria is going cashless. Every part of this country now. I guess some people will be saying, what about those who are unbanked, as they are called? What do we do about them? How do they manage to carry their cash around? To have this conversation with us, we've got two very interesting personalities coming from the banking sector, but not just the banking sector, from CBN itself, to explain to us how, why, what, and when. July the 1st is the date, but let's introduce Mr. Dipo Fatokun, who's Director of Banking and PYT System Department. Good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, and on the other side is Mr. Chidi Omena, who's the Head of Shared Services. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, the last shall be the first. I'll start with you. Now, July the 1st, today is July the 5th, 5 days on, cashless across Nigeria. What does it mean for the man on the street, effective from 5 days ago?
Well, let me just say that basically what we've tried to do is that on the 1st of July 2014, we went live. We started the cashless initiative in the remaining 30 states of the Federation. However, it came with certain amendments to the policy or postponement of certain major issues in the policy. Inconsistent with what we've done in the previous deployments, the phase 1, which was Lagos, and the phase 2 that we had in 6 other states, including the FCT. We didn't start charging for withdrawals above the threshold, because a major point in the policy, which is something we must understand, is that we introduced what we call service charges when you make withdrawals above certain thresholds. For individuals, if you withdraw cumulatively in a day more than 500,000 naira, you get charged 3%. For corporate organizations, if you withdraw more than 3 million in a day, you get charged 5%. However, we've gone live 1st of July, but we postponed those charges for 1 year. So that's what we have done for this particular rollout.
So that is supposed to be an encouragement to say, go out, use your card more, do bank transactions more rather than cash transactions.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, now, that being the case then, why would you get to a point, Mr. Fatokun, why would you get to a point where you will say after a year, you will now get charged for using, for having transactions that means you withdraw a lot more cash?
Yes. You know that even before we got to this stage, charges used to be on both deposits and withdrawal. But the charges on deposits were removed on the 5th of June. as a way of encouraging people to bring in their money into the banking system. The charges on withdrawal will commence in those 30 states on the 1st of July 2015. And that is a way of telling them that the best way of doing your transactions is doing it electronically. So if you know you have to pay for making cash withdrawals, then you may think of exploring other opportunities instead of paying charges on a transaction that you think you need to do. So the e-channel is there. Instead of withdrawing cash, you can use probably an ATM to do a transfer, maybe payment for your subscription. You can go to the bank and tell the bank, please, I want to pay such person if it's a large amount, and they will transfer on your behalf. And you can even sit in the comfort of your home, your office, anywhere 24/7, grab your phone, grab your iPad or whatever device you have and do the transfer instead of taking the trouble to go to the bank to withdraw the cash.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm sure there are still issues with bandwidth, because, I mean, I have experienced this personally where I went to a restaurant, had a meal, wanted to pay with my card. I said, Madam, no network. So what are we going to do? We had to go outside with the machine and move from place to place looking for where we could get a connection. So those issues are still with us, are they not?
They are. Sometimes they are. In fact, if going by my own records from my statistics I've taken around, we know that over 80 to 90% of transactions on UPS, on POSs, using a card are successful. We also know that for a payment system, that is not enough. We actually will expect to have 100% because the integrity and the confidence we should have must be total and complete. We know that. Yeah. But we also understand that these are not the kind of things that you can decree in a day. You know, most point-of-sale terminals use a communication mode called GPRS, provided by the telcos. And just as you use your phone and have drop calls, have issues with data services, that's exactly what happens sometimes. So we know that, and it's a problem. And in fact, the director, when he was also speaking, he had talked about why we sort of decided to postpone this. Part of it is also to ensure, working with the NCC and the telcos, to see that there's the boost, the telecom infrastructure in all those other 30 states. The states where we are now, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and all that, they have, slightly more infrastructural, arrangement in those states. But the remaining 30 states probably will need a bit more, and that's, part of the reason why we say let's give another, couple of months just to make sure that we totally engage the telcos, working with NCC to make sure that these things are in place. We do understand that those things do happen sometimes.
Those things happen.
And if I may add to that,
yes.
We are also looking at alternatives of channels of connectivity, and that is looking at Wi-Fi technology. As we speak, Central Bank is in discussion with a service provider. In fact, we are planning to do a pilot in about 20 states. That's NICOMSAT, owned by the federal government too, such that they will deploy Wi-Fi technology in locations. We are doing a proof of concept. And when we finish that, we will do the pilot. The whole essence is to ensure that people don't have that type of experience you had when you went to the restaurant. So,
how's that going to work?
The way it's going to work is that this POS will also be Wi-Fi enabled. So if there is no signal from the telecommunication companies, that is the SIM, is not receiving signals, the Wi-Fi, just as you have Wi-Fi on your iPad, the Wi-Fi will receive signals, and that will be the means of communicating.
So we'll now change over to Wi-Fi instead.
Now, Mr. Fatokun, let's look at the problem of our culture. My grandmother in the village, you now want her to be making payments with a plastic card, whereas all her life she's used to tying her money to the edge of her wrapper. And now, don't you have serious challenges in the rural areas with people like my grandma?
Thank you. In fact, the issue you have just mentioned now is what we call the issue of financial inclusion in the central bank strategy. Because we think not only of the elites, the educated ones who can read and write. If we want the project to succeed, we must also bring in those that are at the bottom of the pyramid. And central bank is not unmindful of that issue. So what we have done is that apart from the use of plastic cards, which may be strange to people in the rural areas, the mobile payment is also one of the channels for this cashless. And you know,
okay, they all have cell phones now.
That is it.
Yes.
So it makes it easy for them. They are used to their phones. And with their phones, they can make payments, they can receive payments. They can even make payments at the merchants.
That sounds like rocket science to some people who can't even send text messages.
Well, you are right. But going further, I'm sure you are aware that central bank is on a biometric project too. That is the BVN. We are looking at a situation where in some years to come, in fact, the regulation says 2015, you have payment terminals that will be biometric enabled, in which case you may not even need a card. You walk up to a merchant, you have made your purchases, and to authorize your transaction, all you need is your finger. So for that, you need no level of education. But that is in the future. So it's just to convince you that we're actually thinking about it.
Okay, you are still on this issue of the unbanked, or as you describe them, those at the bottom of the pyramid when it comes to banking. You have some people that just cannot bring themselves to not have cash with them. How are you working on getting them to change their mindset to say you can do without the cash?
All right.
And still be able to buy and sell?
All right. Thank you very much. Let me also use this opportunity to say that when we say cashless, it does not mean that there is no cash. What we're actually saying is that there is reduction in the usage of cash, because for some little things you may actually need a little cash, but we want it to reduce. So going to your question, what we are doing is what we have called sensitization. We do it before we roll out the cashless. In fact, in the 30 states that we have gone live on July 1, we have covered all of them by sensitizing them, bringing people on board, going to the markets to convince people that the best way to make payments and receive payments is doing it cashless. We have gone to the local governments, calling the local government chairmen, their councillors, the Market Women Association, the National Union Road Transport Workers, and a lot of other people, convincing them. Because like you rightly said, it is a cultural issue. When you are used to one way of doing things, it will take a long time, a lot of persuasion before you change your ways. So that is what we are doing.
How are you dealing with the traders, for instance? My mind immediately just goes to a place like Jankara Market in Lagos and Onitsha Market. I mean, everything is cash. You want to buy this, even if it is 50,000 naira, count the money and put in my hand. And the guy probably doesn't even have a bank account. How are you dealing with those kinds of people who have huge amounts of money from daily trading?
That's precisely what the cashless initiative is trying to address. And let me also say that in the past couple of years, the past 2-3 years I've introduced it, there's been massive improvement. I say this, with clear statistics, because every day we get reports from NIBS, the Nigerian Bank
Settlement System.
We get the records of the amount and value of transactions that are passed through the electronic system. And we do 300 billion daily. And this is just for, even though it's nationwide, but clearly concentrated in those states that have taken off. So we expect a massive leap by the time we go to the other 30 states. This is what we're trying to address by education, sensitization, and what really happens, is the story before we started this. People will come and you want to pay them. You give them a check, they go actually to the bank, collect that money, count it, Yes, the man sees it and then pays it back into his account. I mean, I'm telling you that this used to happen. So I mean,
in the same bank.
Oh yeah. So we've actually
Collects it,
oh
counts
yes,
it, and pays it back
yes.
in.
You know, so we've actually gone gone miles apart in terms of the improvement in this. And what happens is that once somebody does it once, he actually discovers how easy it is to do. You know, and then it becomes, it's like I said, it's habit, it's attitude, it's cultural. And these are the things
Serious
that
mindset. I have to see my money first
Exactly.
before
and
I
feel it.
Count it.
Absolutely. And that's
Touch
what,
it.
that's what we are gradually changing. And it is really working because, you know, I mean, by the time you do it once or twice and you see how easy it is, nobody needs to tell you. In fact, you will now be complaining that your card has expired, your card is not working properly. You know, these are your issues now. Not that you don't, because nobody has argued with the fact that cashless is a good initiative.
Are you now
You know?
telling me that I can go to a bar market and use my card to make purchases?
Sometimes, yes.
sometimes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, we're not, the penetration of, and, you know, and I think maybe we may also need to understand that on the payment side, which is like what I like to emphasize, where people make payments, where you have the instant payment, where you have the NEFT and all, those ones have gained traction big time.
Okay.
But on the retail side, where you probably have the POSs and the merchants, there are a lot of things that come into play. You know, so we don't. I mean, we expect it to just keep moving slowly and slowly, and this has happened in other climes. In Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, you actually see an akara seller on the road with a point of sale